Part 14. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 133. Chin-Chi's eyebrows moved slightly, and he bent down to pick it up. The next second, the panel appeared. When he saw that the first line of the displayed information was pet key, Chin-Chi said to Sutingyu, "It's a pet key." Chin-Chi still wore a collar around his neck. After confirming that it was a pet key, he untied it as soon as possible. Props: pet collar. Grade: ordinary. Function: can make disobedient pets obedient. Can copies be brought out? Yes. Durability: 92%, reparable. Remarks: don't struggle, no one will come to save you, little darling, just obey, oh ha ha ha. You can take out a copy of the collar now. Chin-Chi put the collar into the inventory, and then handed the pet key to Sutingyu. Sutingyu took out the collar he broke off, inserted the key into the keyhole, and opened the lock a second time. When Chin-Chi saw the collar broken into two pieces, his eyes flashed slightly. "Didn't you say not to break it?" "I'm here to find you," Sutingyu said in a matter-of-fact tone. After unlocking the lock, she happily put the key and collar into the inventory. "Then let's leave the underground coliseum now." "Wait a minute, follow me." Chin-Chi took Sutingyu back to the long and narrow passage. "As soon as I came out, I met the octopus monster that had been guarding the water." Sutingyu's eyes widened in surprise when he saw the octopus monster emerging from the water. Chin-Chi's expression remained as usual. "Give me the pet key first." "Oh." Sutingyu handed the key to Chin-Chi's hand. When the octopus monster saw the pet key in Chin-Chi's hand, he was obviously a little excited. The octopus monster simply put down one of its wrists to Chin-Chi's feet. The latter stepped on it lightly and walked all the way up, close to the collar on the octopus monster's forehead. Seeing this scene, Sutingyu vaguely understood. Chin-Chi probably reached some kind of deal with the big monster in front of him, so he could easily get to Chris's secret room. Chin-Chi quickly unlocked the collar on the octopus monster's forehead. The final step is to remove the collar. Because over the years, the collar and the flesh had grown together, Chin-Chi started directly, tearing off the collar and flesh, and then returned to the ground. There was pain in his forehead, but the octopus showed no sign of anger. Instead, he waved his 8 arms happily. He is finally free. Go make a big fuss and vent your anger. I will take the key and release the others, Chin-Chi said to the octopus monster at this time. The octopus stopped and looked deeply at Chin-Chi, seemingly grateful, then stretched out his 2 wrists and placed them in front of Chin-Chi and Sutingyu. Obviously, the octopus monster wanted to send them to the other side of the drainage channel. Seeing this, Sutingyu took back Big Hui and Little Kanhua, and walked up with Chin-Chi. After sending the person over, the octopus monster sank to the bottom of the water and disappeared. This drainage channel is very deep. He has already left, so we should leave too. Chin-Chi saw Sutingyu's dazed face and explained aloud. Oh. On the way, Sutingyu couldn't help but ask Chin-Chi. Chin-Chi told the truth one by one. Sutingyu was dumbfounded as he listened. It felt too fantasy. Chin-Chi was the direct triggerer of the hidden plot and received more detailed plot information than Sutingyu. This dark and bloody underground coliseum, on the surface, uses bloody battles between slaves and beasts to please the nobles. But one day, the group leader Chris got a magical treasure, a pet key from a mysterious wizard in the field. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 134. Make a collar with the same keyhole based on the pet key, put it around the person's neck, and then go through 7 nights of primitive fighting to stimulate the animal nature in the body. Finally, at midnight on the last night, the person will transform into a beast. So, in a monthly performance, Chris deceived all the slaves and used lies to get rid of their slave status to trick the slaves into voluntarily wearing collars. All slaves who survived 7 nights of fighting, without exception, turned into ugly beasts that could not speak but retained human thoughts. Chris could not specify what kind of beast they could transform into. Some slaves would transform into small beasts that were not threatening and could not add color to the performances in the underground coliseum. What to do with those little beasts? They were skinned and hairless by the butcher, and their flesh and bones were separated. It is fried, stewed and made into dishes by the chef. At last, it was served to the nobles' tables. After Sutinyu heard this, she felt a little creepy. Fortunately, she had foolishly worn the collar before. Chinchi, that octopus monster is actually a human. Well, a beast with a collar cannot disobey the owner of the pet key, so he was sent here by Chris to guard the pet key. He was afraid of Chris, and he also hated him very much. I gave him the opportunity to regain his freedom and revenge, and he quickly chose to betray Chris. Although Sutinyu already had the answer in his mind, he was still shocked after hearing Chinchi's words. Wow! Man turns into beast. Nobles eat humans and become beasts. Is this copy so flavorful? Petkey, mysterious wizard, isn't the game setting of this dungeon too fantasy? It's unscientific, Sutinyu complained. The existence of parallel paradise is not scientific in itself. Chinchi stopped, looked at the ventilation duct above his head that was smashed open, and said, "We're here, let's go up." Huh? Oh. Just as Sutinyu responded, Chinchi suddenly picked him up under his arms and lifted him up high. Sutinyu, shocked. "Climb up quickly, my hands hurt." Sutinyu, who was stunned, was reminded by Chinchi that she remembered that Chinchi's right hand holding her was injured, and quickly reached out to climb up the vent that was already in front of her. After Sutinyu came up, Chinchi jumped slightly, grabbed the edge of the vent, and came up as well. Sutinyu puffed out her cheeks, "Is your hand okay? Please remind me next time." Yet Chinchi lowered his head and couldn't see the expression on his face clearly. Chinchi pointed the way, and the two climbed along the ventilation duct and returned to the 9th floor. At this time, the underground coliseum is in chaos, and Captain Chris, who can take charge of the overall situation, has gone out to socialize early. After receiving the notice, he has just returned. "Where is the thief?" Chris came back with no smile on his face and asked an assistant who was staying at the underground coliseum. The assistant's face turned a little pale and he bent down. "Sir, I don't know who set off the alarm." Then someone among the employees shouted, "A thief stole the group leader's documents," so all the employees started to check for suspicious persons. Before anyone could finish speaking, Chris took off his hat and threw it at the assistant's face. "Idiot. You've been following me for so long, don't you know that I don't have any important documents at all?" The assistant's face was scratched with a red mark by the brim of his hat. He didn't dare to say anything, but he felt aggrieved. Chris would disappear every once in a while, not letting them follow him, but he didn't follow him all the time. Then where is the thief now? Where is he? Chris' face was full of irritation, and he had a bad feeling in his heart. Ah! Oops! The beasts on the 9th floor are rioting. Riot? Not all are wearing collars. Just when he thought of this, Chris' face suddenly changed. Damn it! Petkey. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 135. There are some trash cans piled up in a certain corridor in the west area of the Beast City. All kinds of rancid garbage are thrown on the ground and no one cleans it. From time to time, the screams of black mice can be heard in the corner. There is a sewer cover on the floor of the walkway. At this time, an illusory black shadow floated out, flew around in the empty corridor, and then turned back and said, "Master, there is no one up there." As soon as he finished speaking, the lid was pushed open by a hand from the inside, and two people, a man and a woman, climbed out. These two people were Sutingyu and Qin-Chi, who escaped from the underground coliseum through various ventilation ducts and sewers. Congratulations to the player Angel Su for successfully escaping from the underground coliseum within 7 days. Main mission progress, 100%. Notice: your team member Qin-Chi has triggered a hidden mission. You can only exit the dungeon after completing the hidden mission or failing the hidden mission. Hidden mission progress, 70%. After Sutingyu read the pop-up information on the panel, he suddenly thought of a question. Qin-Chi, Fatty escaped from the underground coliseum before you triggered the hidden mission. He has completed the main mission, so there won't be any dungeons, right? Before the limited time of the escape dungeon ends, players can generally choose the time to leave after completing the main mission. If Fatty is really waiting for us outside the city, he will not leave the dungeon first. After Qin-Chi explained quietly, he took out two men's black jackets with hoods from the inventory, and handed one to Sutingyu. Put it on, we performed in the Colosseum, and may be remembered by some people in the city. Keep your face. And Qin-Chi's blood stains were also very eye-catching. Oh, Sutingyu's eyes lit up when he saw that Qin-Chi still had clothes in his inventory. When this round of dungeon ends, will she also prepare some daily items in the inventory? Sutingyu put the few medicines in the two medical boxes into one, threw the empty medicine box into the trash can next to it, and tied the other to his waist. The coat Qin-Chi gave her was exchanged for a few sizes larger according to her own size. It was very loose when it was put on Sutingyu, and it even grew a bit, almost covering her knees. Fortunately, it did not affect her normal walking. Let's go. Qin-Chi had already put on his coat and put on his hood. Most of his face was covered, leaving only a light shadow. Oh. As agreed with Fatty before, the two of them went out of the West City Gate to meet Fatty. During the day, in the Beast City, there are many Western-style castles, with brick buildings of different heights interspersed among them. The spacious, clean, and peaceful main road may be only a corner away from the narrow and dirty lanes. The luxurious and elegant crystal carriage shines like colorful glass in the sunlight, and the curtains made of light gauze occasionally emit bursts of perfume. Like domestic animals, the slaves driven by the nobles worked hard under the scorching sun, making their faces red and hot and sweating profusely. There are some stalls on both sides of the street, and the common people are shouting hard. Occasionally, a few arrogant nobles take a fancy to the gadgets on the stalls, and take them without even giving a penny. The civilians who have the goods taken away nod and bow. Smiled flatteringly, without a trace of resentment or anger on his face. Along the way, Sutingyu witnessed all the people and scenery along the road in the Beast City. This is the trapped Beast City. In the city, everyone is reduced to a trapped beast. Boom. Suddenly, a violent explosion sounded from a certain direction. Immediately afterwards, flames shot into the sky and black smoke filled the air, seemingly accompanied by the screams of humans and the roars of wild beasts. At this time, the two people's panels popped up again, showing that the progress of the hidden task had reached 85%. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuan-Ke. Chapter 136. Taking advantage of the chaos in the underground coliseum, which attracted the attention of most people in the city, Sutingyu and Qin-Chi did not dare to waste time, so they walked slowly and quickly arrived in front of the West City Gate. There were two teams entering and exiting the city gate. Sutingyu looked around and found that there was a fee for entering and exiting the city. Seeing this, Sutingyu quickly found the gold left on his body and took a smaller one to pay for the two of them to leave the city. After the two people left the city gate, only about 10 seconds passed before a black Pegasus came running from the city. An inner city soldier was riding on horseback. He held up an order with the red seal in his hand and shouted loudly, "Marquis Chris has an order to seal the city gate. No one can enter or exit the city freely." If anyone is found acting strangely, he will be arrested immediately. Those who refuse to follow will be executed on the spot. Sutingyu and Qin-Chi, who had just walked a few steps away, turned their heads and looked at each other silently. Almost simultaneously, they walked away without looking back, their faces as calm as water, pretending to be deaf. What's going on? None of it seemed like it happened. Those who had not yet entered or exited the city gate were somewhat unhappy and caused a minor disturbance, attracting all the guards at the city gate. In this way, the two of them passed the danger and left the city smoothly. Occasionally, I could meet one or two people on the outskirts of the city. After several inquiries, I determined the specific location of the mass grave. After taking some time, the two arrived at the mass grave. The mass grave is in a low-lying area under a neither high nor low cliff, with a forest on the other side. There are mountains on one side and forests on the other. Naturally, there are all kinds of animals in the wild. There are even some large carnivores or carrion animals, because this is a mass grave with countless corpses. This place is quite big. How are we going to find Fatty? Sutingyu looked around blankly. She didn't think that someone with such a timid character like Fatty would stay in a mass grave. Not to mention that dangerous beasts would appear here at any time. Ordinary people would immediately turn around and run away when they saw the corpses everywhere. How about we go to the nearby mountains to find Fatty? Sutingyu turned to ask Qin-Chi. No need, Qin-Chi suddenly said. Huh? Sutingyu was puzzled at first, but when she saw Qin-Chi's eyes focused on somewhere behind her, she quickly turned her head. The piles of corpses all over the mountains and plains are like a hell on earth. But in a certain corner, Sutingyu suddenly saw a moving figure. Is the body alive? This idea flashed through Sutingyu's mind subconsciously, but he rejected it the next second. Because no one could be so fat and so lively. Sutingyu watched what looked like a fat man moving flexibly in the pile of corpses, sometimes bending down, sometimes jumping, with a sack on his back. Qin-Chi gently raised his lips. Here, the fat man is right there. Sutingyu shouted excitedly, Fat man. The fat man on the pile of corpses heard someone calling him, turned his head left and right, and immediately saw the two of them. Boss. Brother Qin. You are here. The fat man didn't care what else he picked up, and ran towards the two of them happily holding the sack. Sutingyu also trotted over to greet him, talking non-stop, Fat man, you haven't left the dungeon yet? Why are you still in the mass grave? What are you packing in this sack? Brother, didn't you ask me to wait outside? Why did you leave the dungeon first? The fat man was puzzled. Hee, it's okay. You might as well stay. Now you've earned the hidden mission reward for nothing. Next update time, after 1800 hours. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuan-K. Chapter 137. Qin-Chi stood there, quietly watching the two people not far away talking to each other. But slowly, he felt that everything in front of him seemed to be blurry. Qin-Kai frowned, and just as he took a step forward, his body fell back uncontrollably. He was stunned for 2 seconds, shook his head that was aching, but felt that his limbs were getting weaker. The field of vision gradually turned from bright to dark, and the two figures over there were blurred. Finally, they lost consciousness and fell into chaos. Qin-Chi. Brother Qin. Two anxious voices were the only ones he could hear the second before he lost consciousness. Heaven. The dark clouds are overwhelming and the sun is extinguished. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning pierced the sky, followed closely by thunder that shook the world like the roar of a giant beast. Heavy rain and light rain, urgent and urgent, like countless tiny and clear pearls falling from the sky, smashing into the muddy mountain road, moistening the dry soil, falling into the lush forest, washing and brightening a touch of green. Almost there, right in front. In the mountains, the fat man was panting while carrying the unconscious Qin-Chi on his back. Sutingyu had already taken off the coat and put it on Qin Shi's head and body. Rain kept dripping on her little face, but she couldn't spare her hands to wipe it away. Both hands were holding onto the edges of her coat. Finally, the two saw an abandoned wooden house and quickly got inside. Here is the hunter's abandoned temporary residence that I happened to find. The fat man carefully placed Qin Shi on his back on the hay mat that had been laid out, and explained while breathing heavily, while selecting the item from the inventory. He took out the medical kit he had reserved. Sutingyu saw that there were some dry firewood in the house. Fat man, do you have a lighter or matches? Yes, the fat man took out a lighter from the inventory and handed it to Sutingyu. Sutingyu followed the method of the fat man in the previous dungeon and laid out a few dry firewood, then grabbed a handful of hay, lit it first, blew the flame gently, and then put it into the dry firewood. Hoo-hoo. Sutingyu blew several times, lit the firewood, and then started to clean up the excess hay clippings on the ground next to him. After checking Qin Shi's condition, Fatty rebandaged the latter's wounds. How is Qin Shi? Sutingyu came over and asked. The fat man closed the medicine box. He lost too much blood and had several animal bite marks on his body. The wounds were not treated in time and became infected. Bite marks? It seems that when Qin Shi persuaded other beasts before, it was not all smooth sailing. Is it serious? Sutingyu asked again quickly. The fat man wiped the rain from his face. Don't worry, big brother, this is a copy. Brother Qin can survive the remaining 2 days in his condition. Hearing this, Sutingyu breathed a sigh of relief. That's fine, but when will Qin Shi wake up? Tonight, or tomorrow. Brother Qin also needs sleep, Fatty estimated. By the way, boss, why did you come out so quickly? Did you find the key? And what's up with that hidden mission? Of course. Knowing that Qin Shi was fine, Sutingyu relaxed and told the fat man about the current situation in detail. When Fatty heard the full and detailed version of the hidden plot, he was also shocked. Sutingyu and Qin Shi later released all the wild beasts and encouraged the wild beasts to destroy the underground Colosseum. This was also one of the tasks Qin Shi received. Now, only the last 15% is left. As long as we escape the 7th day safely, we can complete the hidden mission and successfully clear the dungeon. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 138. Copy Day 6, Morning. The heavy rain has begun to stop. The air in the mountains seems to be carrying the crisp and sweet fragrance of rain and soil. The sunlight filtering through the holes in the window paper quietly shines into the house, leaving spots of light on the ground. Sutingyu pushed the door open and came in. She subconsciously looked at Qin Shi, who was lying in the corner, and looked into his eyes with a pair of deep eyes. Sutingyu was stunned for a moment, then walked over in surprise. Qin Shi, you're awake. Qin Shi, who woke up, blinked his eyes and raised his upper body with his elbows. Where is this? This is a foothold that Fatty found in the mountains. Sutingyu walked to the edge of the fire shelf, picked up the iron box for boiling water, poured some hot water into the empty cup next to it, and then handed it to Qin Shi. Now, drink water. Qin Shi took it, lowered his head and took a few sips. Sutingyu put the tin box back, picked up a slender piece of hay, poked the fire, and said with a normal expression, Qin Shi, this copy is about to end. Yeah, Qin Shi answered, holding the water glass. There's nothing wrong with this copy, right? Sutingyu stared at the fire, was silent for a while, and then spoke again. After clearing the dungeon, can you handle the real things? This time, Qin Shi didn't respond. We are good friends. If you need help, you can tell me. Sutingyu turned her head and looked serious. Qin Shi finally spoke, With a slightly hoarse voice and a hint of indifference, no player will casually reveal his identity in reality. Sutinyu looked startled. Bang! There was a slight movement outside the door. But neither of the two people in the room seemed to notice. Qin-Chi raised his head at this time and changed the subject. Can I believe you? Sutinyu's eyes widened slightly, then she blinked twice, and she laughed. Of course you can, good friend. Yes. Qin-Chi lowered his head and took another sip of hot water. Room 303, number 6-203, Liebinghu, Dingsheng Villa District, Kyoto. Seeing Qin-Chi mention the address, Sutinyu quickly wrote it down. When the copy comes out, Fatty and I will go find you. Outside the door, the fat man who had neither left nor returned a long time ago heard the noise. The two people inside seemed to have finished talking, so they walked in seriously, pretending that nothing happened, and holding an empty sack in their hands. Fat man, how are you? Sutinyu turned to ask the fat man with a happy face. Yesterday, Fatty told Sutinyu about picking up collars at mass graves. Because Qin-Chi was in coma and her body temperature suddenly rose last night, the two of them were not in the mood to pick up the collar. It wasn't until dawn that Qin-Chi's condition stabilized. Fatty had just gone to the mass graves to check out the sites in advance, while Sutinyu walked around the area to ensure that there were no wild beasts or raptors around. The corpse truck in the underground coliseum brought a lot of corpses, including slaves, prison workers, wild beasts. By the way, I also found a few new player corpses. Qin-Chi woke up. Although the fat man was also happy, but after seeing the bloody or burned corpses all over the ground, his expression was not very relaxed. Sutinyu blinked his big eyes. I'm just talking about how I feel like I forgot something. As soon as Sutinyu said this, Qin-Chi and Fatty looked at her. After Fatty and you left, the player named Yuza came to me again, saying that he was level 4 and wanted to cooperate with us to escape. I didn't agree directly at the time and fooled him. The fat man scratched his head and thought back. I didn't find the body of the player named Knight, but I did see the body of one of his followers. Since he is an old player, he should have taken the opportunity to escape yesterday, Qin-Chi added. After a brief chat, the topic turned back to the collar. I don't know or be familiar with other strange players. Whether they can escape or not has nothing to do with them. This dungeon will end tonight, and we will have a real interview tomorrow. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuan-Kei. Chapter 139. The seventh day of the copy. Fatty was the first to get up early. Because he had gained a lot from picking up collars yesterday, the fat man was full of energy after one night. Taking advantage of the time when Sutinyu and Qin-Chi had breakfast, he went out to see if the mass graves would be delivered today. Fresh and warm bodies. Boom. Goo-goo, goo-goo. When the fat man was about to reach the mass grave, a gunshot suddenly came from the direction of the mass grave, startling several birds in the forest to flap their wings and fly high. The fat man stopped and looked surprised. Why are there gunshots? At this time, the fat man didn't have the guts to go directly to the mass grave. After thinking about it, he found a hidden high ground nearby. Looking down, he could just see part of the mass grave. After lying down for a while, the fat man saw several vehicles that looked like large trucks parked on the dirt road at the edge of the mass grave. At the front was a black RV. Those big trucks had the same symbols painted on them, and Fatty had seen them on the corpse trucks in the underground coliseum. These are all people from the underground coliseum. The carriages of several large trucks were opened one after another, and soldiers wearing city defense uniforms jumped out of them. They had cold expressions. Each of them had a gun on his back and a sword hanging on his waist, looking menacing. The door of the RV opened, and several people came out one after another. There was only one person that Fatty knew, and that was the host Smita, who hosted the show every night, and Smita was vaguely headed by a middle-aged Mediterranean man. This is broken. The fat man didn't dare to stay any longer, so he quickly turned around and ran back towards the wooden house. Next to the RV, Chris was leaning on a cane, his face gloomy. "Sir, are the two escaped slaves who stole your treasure really hiding in this area?" Smita asked. Smita's chief assistant glanced at his boss's face and replied aloud, "The incident happened the day before yesterday. Sir, I ordered the sealing of the Beast City and all the main thoroughfares outside the city. Only the guards at the west gate of the city received one. A piece of gold is the fee for leaving the city, instead of silver coins. Now I have found it in other places, but this is the only one left." Chris watched groups of soldiers entering the mountain, feeling furious. Those two lowly runaway slaves not only stole his keys, but also incited those lowly beasts to launch a riot. When they are caught, they must become a delicacy on his table. It's not good. It's not good. Fatty didn't dare to stop along the way and ran directly back to the wooden house. A bunch of soldiers with guns and swords came down from the mountain, and they seemed to be Chris and the people from the underground Coliseum. "Smita is here." Fatty had never seen Chris, but he remembered the black RV Chin-Chi had mentioned. Most likely, Chris was among the people in it. Hearing this, Sutinyu ate the last bit of bread in his hand in a few moments, and stood up in a hurry. "I'll go take a look, fat man, keep an eye on Chin-Chi and don't let him go out." After Chin-Chi's coma, Sutinyu finally understood. Chin-Chi is so tolerant. Unless he was exhausted, lost too much blood, fell into a coma, and even almost burned out his brain, just looking at the surface, it would be impossible to tell what kind of state he was in. It's the last day now, and Sutinyu doesn't want Chin-Chi to make another mistake. In addition, played, very meow. This fairy endured the humiliation and burden in the underground Coliseum for 5 days. She was bullied by others and forced to perform on stage. She was also bullied by wild beasts and forced to play together. Today is such a good day. The sky is high and the clouds are light. The weather is calm and sunny. It's a good time to settle accounts. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuan-K. Chapter 140. Sutinyu walked out of the wooden house and walked to the door. With a wave of his hand, Dehui and 7 small broken flowers appeared in front of Sutinyu. "Let's go, let's take you to find something fun." Sutinyu looked towards a certain direction of the mountain. From time to time, there was some movement there. Suddenly, she showed a pure and innocent smile, which scared the big gray and the little residual flowers. Light. After Sutinyu left, Big Hui and Little Kanhu looked at each other silently and realized, wouldn't they be harmed this time? Dewai, okay. Little broken flowers, asterisk, master, we are here to help you entertain your guests. So, they all followed Sutinyu in a hurry. Once 100 soldiers entered the mountain, it may be because the trees growing nearby were too prosperous, blocking most of the sunlight from the leaves, leaving mottled tree shadows on the ground. Because it had rained before, the mountain trails were muddy and slippery. In addition, we had to search the mountain. It was impossible to only walk where there were mountain trails. Some bushes were dense and covered the original ground. From time to time, we would step on puddles. This forced the soldiers to slow down their search of the mountain. 11, 11, 11. A dark-faced soldier who was far away from the team had just stepped across a grassy area that was almost as high as his knees, and there was a slight sound in the place behind him. Because the mountain was too big, in order to speed up the progress, the soldiers worked in groups of 4 and searched separately. 11, 11, 11. The black-faced soldier suddenly turned around, drew his gun and pointed it forward, his eyes alert and calm, but there was nothing, only the breeze gently blowing the grass tips swaying slightly in front of his eyes. The black-faced soldier breathed a sigh of relief, put down his gun, and was about to turn around when a vine suddenly shot out from his feet, wrapping him around and dragging him. Before the black-faced soldier could react, he was dragged to the ground, his hands, feet, and mouth tightly entangled with vines. Finally, he was dragged away with force and disappeared into the grass. The same plot and the same treatment were played out one after another in different places in the mountains. When the number of people became smaller and smaller, the remaining soldiers finally realized that something was wrong. The commander of the soldiers fired a rallying shot. 20 minutes later, only 45 people, including him, came back. The mountain at their feet, where most of the wild beasts and birds were scared away by their gunshots one after another, should have been ordinary, but now, it felt inexplicably that it had turned into a devilish mountain that could silently devour people. "Sir, it's too weird here. Should we go back first, and report to Marquis Chris?" Some soldiers backed down. "What are you afraid of? From now on, no one is allowed to be more than 3 meters apart. We are ready to fight at any time," the soldier leader scolded, but cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He had lost so many men inexplicably. If he returned empty-handed, he would be so ashamed of Marquis Chris's high hopes for him. But everyone was extremely vigilant and fully prepared mentally. As time went by, the team of 45 people continued to reduce their numbers. 42, 39, 37, 34, 28. It's the cane. It's the cane that suddenly appeared and kidnapped the person. After the 75th victim disappeared, someone in the remaining 25 soldiers finally saw the culprit of the attack. "Everyone can only walk on the ground without grass or other shelters," the soldier commander gave the order, feeling extremely aggrieved. This invisible, intangible enemy hiding in the dark is really too cunning. If it was a head-on confrontation, even if he was beaten, the soldier commander would not feel as aggrieved as he does now. But he forgot one thing. In the beginning, they were the ones who wanted to take advantage of the two of them by bullying them. I was confused and just ended it. Suddenly I got excited and wrote longer and longer. I overestimated myself again. But as promised, it will end tonight, and it will be night after midnight. I can still have liver. Tomorrow's update may not be on time at midnight. Meow fairies who stay up late can watch it again during the day. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 141. Gila. Sutingyu sat on a large smooth stone, raised his head and drank half of the bottle of mineral water. Behind her, on the ground and in the trees, lay and hung 75 unconscious soldiers. At this time, Xiao Kanhua dragged in another soldier who was struggling. When he saw Sutingyu, his eyes widened as if he recognized who she was. Sutingyu was not surprised, because she had already learned from the soldiers in front that wanted posters with her and Qin-Chi's faces were now plastered all over the trapped beast city. It could be said that they had become famous overnight, and everyone knew about it. For this dignity and scenery, Sutingyu expressed her heartfelt thanks and decided to double the gift in return. Especially the noble, elegant, and well-respected Captain Chris. She must let the respected leader Chris experience the peak of life. Sutingyu ignored the soldier and knocked him unconscious with a brick, untied the vines, tied them up with ordinary vines collected nearby, and threw them to the ground. Xiao Kanhua took off one of the soldier's boots, took out a sock, and stuffed it into the unconscious soldier's mouth. Just then, a soldier next to him was about to wake up. Xiao Kanhua's cane picked up a piece of gravel the size of a human head and smashed it into the man's face. The soldier fainted again. The innocent little broken flower threw away the gravel and walked away briskly. 4 more soldiers were dragged over one after another. The same technique and the same stun method were performed again and again. Sutingyu counted the number of people and found that 80 soldiers had been eliminated, with 20 more to go. They were all gathered together and it was time to finish. If the delay continues, it won't be fun if Chris finds out something is wrong and runs away. At this time, the mentality of the remaining soldiers is about to collapse. As long as there was the slightest movement in the grass, their whole bodies would tense up like nerves, and some would even shoot at the grass not far away that was swaying in the breeze. Only this time, it was really the wind. Come out. Come out quickly. Come out if you feel like it. Some soldiers had veins popping out on their foreheads, their eyes showed extreme nervousness and fear, and they yelled around frantically. The soldier commander was unable to stop it, and he had no intention of stopping it. Even his usually stable mentality was gradually being worn away and eroded by this torturous fear attack, and was about to be exhausted. Ahahaha. When the soldiers were extremely nervous, someone seemed to be humming a tune in a trance. The singing sounded from far away to near, and gradually even the lyrics became clear. When the sea faces raging tides, I run to find the footprints of the past. The reflection in the sunset is charming and beautiful, but I lost the story and you. You said you longed for the mystery of the sea, and also longed for our lost past. Share the secrets of the sea, the blue sea bottom, and the scenery of distant mountains. The ethereal singing is like a sweet spring, washing away the irritable soul, and like a spring breeze, soothing anxiety. As soon as the soldiers' hands loosened, the guns and swords they held fell to the ground. More than 20 falling sounds were heard in succession. Everyone forgets their worries and falls asleep with relaxed faces. After the singing died down, Sutinyu walked out of the darkness and released the small broken flowers in the inventory to let them clean up the mess. I saw that each of the little broken flowers was extremely skilled in business. Tie someone up, take off their shoes, stuff their socks, and drag them away. Done in one go. Moving clouds and flowing water. Well, next. Sutinyu smiled lightly, glanced at the sleeping soldiers on the ground, and then turned to look at the foot of the mountain. It should be the turn of our respected Captain Chris. Lyrics taken from Tide. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 142. At the foot of the mountain. Chris waited for a long time and returned to the car to rest midway. After nearly an hour, no one was found, and no soldier came back to report the situation. Chris always felt like something was wrong. This premonition came about because his underground coliseum was completely destroyed the day before yesterday and had to be closed for repairs. Stop. At this time, there was a commotion outside the car. Chris got out of the car and saw a weak girl half surrounded by his escort team. The face of this girl was familiar to Chris. She was one of the 2 escaped slaves he had been desperately looking for these days. Although Chris wondered why Sutinyu showed up directly, when he thought of the underground coliseum he was under repair and the missing pet key. Catch him. Chris gave an order, and the escort team consisting of 20 people moved closer to Sutinyu, cut off Sutinyu's retreat, and surrounded them. Seeing this, Sutinyu raised a smile and picked up the brick in his hand. Bang! 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 Within a few minutes, everyone was beaten to the ground. Now, Chris no longer had the majesty and elegance he had before. After realizing that Sutinyu was difficult to deal with, he even wanted to leave Smita and drive away by himself. A little bit, Dahwei suddenly appeared from the car, grinning like a bloodbath, and was so frightened that Chris' face turned pale. At this time, a singing voice came from behind, and Chris suddenly felt sleepy. Finally, I fell asleep unbearably. After everything was settled, Sutinyu called Chin-Chi and Fatty. Boss, what should we do now? The fat man looked at the sleeping people on the ground and scratched his head. Ordinary NPCs are thrown into mass graves. Whether they are picked up by wild beasts or whether they wake up with nothing wrong depends on their luck. Sutinyu said the solution he had thought of long ago. As for Chris, Sutinyu rolled his eyes slyly and smiled. I remember when I was leaving the city, I saw a flagpole in the square in front of the city's administrative building. Tear off his clothes and hang them on top. In this way, respected Captain Chris can become famous in the Beast City from the inside out. Hiss. After hearing Sutingyu's shrimp and pig heart plan, the fat man took a deep breath, and then his eyes lit up. What a great boss. He can come up with such excellent ideas. If you want to do this, you have to enter the city today, Chin Chi reminded from the side. That's right, fatty. You will be the driver and drive into the city while we hide in the car. Okay. There was no arrest warrant for the fat man in the city, and the car they used to enter the city this time was Chris's RV. The guard guarding the city gate was very familiar with it. Not only did they not have to pay the city fee, they even skipped the inspection. The three of them entered the city directly. After entering the city, Fatty found a remote and uninhabited place and stopped the car. There were wanted posters for Sutingyu, and the two of them posted everywhere in the city. In order not to cause trouble, the three of them stayed in the car until night. Without the performances in the underground coliseum, the Beast City seemed lonely and dull at night. Civilians basically didn't want to waste lamp oil after dark, which also caused most of the city to be dark, which actually helped the three people's actions. When Chris was about to be stripped naked, Sutingyu's face was full of excitement, but the next second Chin Chi covered his eyes. In the end, it was up to the fat man to lift the flagpole, tie the rope to the flagpole, and lift the person up little by little. I believe that by tomorrow morning, the people above will be famous. Unfortunately, she couldn't see that scene. After it was done, Sutingyupa pulled down Chin Chi's hand, covering her eyes with a slight regret. On the way back to the RV, the three of them met a drunkard. Sutingyu took a look at the man's face. Oh haha. Whip man. Old acquaintance, wow. Without saying a word, Sutingyu went up and gave the person a fat beating, beating the person from a thin face to a fat face, which relieved the slight regret in his heart. Complete. This copy. There are 2 more updates. I will update again during the day.